So, let me ask you something. Are you exhausted? And I don't just mean tired, I mean deeply, constantly drained by the endless digital pings, the overflowing closets, and just that low-level hum of anxiety that never really seems to go away. Well, today in this explainer, we're diving into an incredible wealth of source material, from former corporate executives to a wandering jeweler, all the way to financial analysts, and they've all discovered a remarkably counterintuitive truth about our happiness, our stuff, and how owning less might actually be the ultimate life hack for gaining absolute freedom.
I really want you to start by asking yourself this profound question. Just take a breath and let it sink in for a second. Today, we are exploring exactly why modern consumerism is suffocating us, and more importantly, how we can systematically break free. You see, we've been sold this template for the American dream that essentially demands we work harder, buy more, and constantly upgrade our lives. It promises that happiness is always just one more purchase away. But, as our sources so clearly reveal, when we constantly acquire things, we aren't actually buying happiness. We're just buying hidden burdens.
Look, consider two completely different lives. Over here in apartment A, we have a high earner. They're surrounded by 75-inch screens and overflowing closets, but they're living in secret anxiety, quite literally just 2 paychecks away from a total financial crisis. Now, they didn't consciously decide to live on the edge like that. They just fell victim to the invisible costs of ownership, where every single item requires space, maintenance, and mental energy. Contrast that with apartment B, a modest earner, but with a highly curated space and true, unshakable financial security. They measure their wealth not by the sheer volume of stuff they accumulate, but by the massive amount of options and freedom they possess.
Now, what's truly shocking is this number right here, 2.2 billion. That is the square footage of personal storage space in the US alone. To put that into perspective, we have bought so much excess stuff that we literally have to rent out tiny, windowless houses just to store it all. Even though our homes are nearly 3 times the size they were back in the 1950s, we've gone on a buying spree so massive that we had to invent an entirely new industry just to warehouse the things we don't even have room for. It's wild.
And this brings us to a really fascinating psychological reality known as the 80-20 rule. Basically, it shows that we generally only use 20% of our possessions about 80% of the time. Think about that. That means the rest is just dead weight causing visual clutter. And our sources point out that visual clutter isn't just mildly annoying, it actually spikes your cortisol levels. Your brain is essentially processing this subtle, constant hum of stress from objects just sitting around that you aren't even using. Your messy room is actively stressing your nervous system.
Okay, so how do we fix this? Let's break down the 7 core lessons of minimalism.
Lesson 1 requires a massive mental framework shift, and it's all about calculating cost per use. We are so trained by society to just look at the initial price tag, right? But the true test of an object's value is how often it actively serves you. Buying cheap often means buying twice. Recognizing that utility over time is the real metric of value, well, that completely changes how you shop.
This mathematical breakdown cuts right through the marketing hype. We so often fall into the psychological trap of buying for our fantasy selves. You know, that imaginary version of us who goes hiking every single weekend or attends fancy galas. But contrasting those aspirational purchases with the cold, hard math of cost per use brings us crashing back to reality. It absolutely proves that spending more upfront on something you are going to use constantly is fundamentally cheaper than some impulse buy that just sits trapped in the back of your closet.
Moving on to Lesson 2, the 20-20 rule. Listen, we all have that one dreaded drawer full of random, tangled, unidentified electronic cables that we keep purely out of fear. For those pesky just-in-case items clogging up your home, this rule was the ultimate antidote to your anxiety. If you can replace a trivial item quickly and cheaply, like under $20 and in under 20 minutes, just let it go. Release the burden of storing it today. Actually, you can even toss unsure things into a cardboard box for 6 months just to prove to yourself you don't actually need them.
Lesson 3 is the hell yes standard. We've got to stop accepting lukewarm items into our lives. If a purchase, or frankly, even a calendar commitment isn't a hell yes, it is inevitably just going to become a physical or mental burden. Adopting a strict 90% rule means that eventually everything you own becomes your absolute favorite thing. Saying no to lukewarm items is actually saying yes to protecting your peace and reclaiming your precious energy.
Now for Lesson 4, the replacement test. Let's try a vivid little thought experiment. Imagine you're traveling and your luggage is permanently lost by the airline. Gone. Picture the items in that bag right now. Would you genuinely be devastated and immediately pay to replace them?
Or, honestly, would you feel a secret, sudden wave of relief? It's kind of a terrifying thought experiment, but it taps into a very real emotion. It exposes the truth that a vast majority of the things in our homes are kept simply out of inertia, not intentionality.
Lesson 5 is where we build intentional purchasing habits to combat that massive dopamine rush of online shopping. Delaying gratification and making spending difficult naturally starves the impulse to buy things you don't truly need. So by forcing yourself to put a desired item on a wish list for 24 hours, or by literally deleting your saved credit card numbers from your browser so you actually have to get up and find your wallet, you totally short-circuit that emotional rush of instant gratification. Lesson 6, a place for everything. We all know that morning panic of frantically searching for lost keys or your wallet, and how that friction completely ruins the start of your day, right? If your everyday items don't have a specific home in your house, they just become perpetual visual clutter that drains your mental energy. Dedicating a specific, permanent spot for everything you own drastically reduces the daily chaos, and it directly connects physical organization to deep emotional serenity.
And finally, Lesson 7, invest in experiences and freedom. This rule is all about reallocating our capital. It shifts our money away from upgrading cars and buying fast fashion and redirects those dollars toward buying back our own time, freedom, and memories. Think about it. Physical goods depreciate. They rust, they break, they fade into the background. But experiences and freedom, they compound over time. They appreciate in value as memories and ultimately shape who we are.
All right, let's shift gears and look at the emotional turning point behind all of this.
So what are we actually searching for when we continuously buy more? The sources detail some incredibly powerful stories of executives earning massive six-figure salaries, sitting in these beautiful corner offices, and literally weeping because they realized they were just blindly buying stuff to fill an inner void. One individual recalled the exact moment he was handed a massive promotion, and instead of joy, he felt completely trapped. He realized the brutal irony that his high salary was just golden handcuffs, keeping him chained to a cycle of buying expensive things to cope with a job he absolutely despised.
This quote right here perfectly captures a psychological phenomenon known as the hedonic treadmill. We are continuously sold solutions to problems we don't even have, which keeps us addicted to this endless cycle of dissatisfaction. A second car or a bigger house provides an initial rush of joy, sure, but we quickly adapt, become dissatisfied again, and start looking for the next fix. We're desperately craving contentment and meaning, but we're trying to shop for objects to get it.
Consider the stark contrast of Theo, a former wealthy diamond jeweler. This guy used to manage literal mountains of ore dug from the earth for profit. But he traded the heavy physical and psychological burden of his corporate guilt for a life of gardening, owning absolutely nothing but 9.6 kilograms of gear in a backpack. The physical lightness he achieved by shedding his possessions completely transformed his life, allowing him to exchange his labor for room, board, and absolute peace.
When Theo stripped away his identity as a wealthy jeweler and shed his worldly possessions, he was forced to actually meet himself. He discovered that unshakable hope and pure joy are completely untethered from physical objects, and the realization was profound. As he looked in the mirror, he noted with pure awe that joy changes the bones of your face. When you stop deriving your identity from what you own, you finally figure out who you actually are.
So let's turn these philosophies into some massive action with a practical 7-day challenge.
This is a cohesive week-long progression to completely reset your mind and your space. The challenge starts with super easy physical wins on days 1 and 2. Tackling 2-minute chores instantly and spending just 5 minutes clearing surfaces before bed to completely change the psychological tone of your next morning. By days 3 and 4, you're setting strict boundaries, turning off digital notifications, and boxing up the things you hoard. And it all culminates in the final boss on day 7, defining enough. This means deciding in advance what level of material comfort truly satisfies you, so you can stop moving the goalposts every single time you get a raise.
Which brings us to our final takeaway: making room for what actually matters. Listen, minimalism isn't about living in a sterile white room with a single spoon. It is simply about curating your physical space to create immense financial and emotional optionality. It is so easy to view this lifestyle through the lens of what you are losing, but that is entirely backward. When your money isn't tied up in things you don't need, you gain the ultimate wealth, the ability to choose exactly how you spend your time.
I want you to literally look around your room right now. Really look at it. Which items in your physical space are you intentionally choosing to keep, and which items are secretly stealing your ultimate freedom? Stop letting your possessions own you. Take a hard look at your space, reclaim your time, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.